Good evening, everyone, and I hope you're all enjoying this Burns night here with friends, old and new. Burns night is an occasion that people that live in Scotland just love, and people all over the world, in fact. It really brings people together, and it is great to have us all together tonight. And I think it's fitting that we should be here gathered for a poet, to find community not in a flag or in a symbol, but in the words that we all share, even though the sounds might be different. Oh, my love's like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. Oh, my love's like the melody that's sweetly played in tune. Very nice. But that's the romanticised side of Burns. Romance brings two people together. But for more to join you around the table, you need something else. Poetry is lifeblood of truth, told in language distilled, and that is why we celebrate Burns. So much of his work is to desire change. It's an ideal, it's an end to the means and ways that keep us apart. Poverty, class inequality, being taught to speak of the other like shadow to your light. They speak of Burns now as a light, although they didn't always say it at the time. A new licht, they call him, in the Scottish Enlightenment, speaking against the dominant auld lichts, or the old lights, who wanted society to just stay the same. Burns spoke for change. A new licht, flickering in a dark time of displacement and inequality. A new licht around which to gather together and bring change through common ground. But that's the ideal. That's the romanticised. The world of the poet is the world of the intangible. To see Burns as a light is clear looking back, but we, my friends, are here, and things are not always so clear to those of us who inhabit the present. Things are not always so certain, and that is why we need to remember. It's easy to view our world in metaphors of light and shadow, of new lichts and auld, and in the certainty of one state over another, but change happens in that place in which one is least certain of the world's existence. Poets interpret that invisible. It's up to us to make those words flesh. At 13 years old, a young Syrian by the name of Amine Abu Kerech wrote these words: I'm trying to design a country that will go with my poetry and not get in the way when I'm thinking, where soldiers don't walk over my face. I'm trying to design a country which will be worthy of me if I'm ever a poet, and make allowances if I burst into tears. There's not a person among us that doesn't aspire to that land. It may not be a land of bright burnished light in which we arrive and suddenly cease to cast a shadow. No, that's a land of poetry. And what we seek is but one worthy of her words. Between the feigned certainties that exist in words of light and shade is where that place flickers and communicates with us before it can be understood. You'll not find it in the language that sells newspapers, that makes headlines, that wins elections and draws lines in the sand. These words of rhetoric we read in newspapers and hear from the worst among us. We taste its bitter residue in the corridors of power. Yeats tells us that we make out of the quarrel with others rhetoric, but out of the quarrel with ourselves comes poetry. Tonight we leave the rhetoric to the world outside. To celebrate a poet is to listen to the rocks and the wind and to understand it's the same sound we all hear. We make allowance for those in tears because our quarrel should only be with ourselves. To be better, to remember, to design that land worthy of a poet. If you were in that cold wind, I'd shelter you, said Burns. And let those words shelter us all together as we leave that cold wind outside. And in the warmth, we raise our glass in this still and uncertain space between, together, to a land worthy of the poet.